Well, it's happened. The U.S. government is officially in a shutdown. So let's break down what that actually means, how we even got to this point, and, what it's going to take to get things up and running again.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, let's start with just one number, 750,000. That's how many federal workers are looking at being furloughed. It's a massive figure, and it immediately grounds this whole political story in a very real, very human cost.
So you hear this word furloughed thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean? Well, it's basically a temporary, unpaid leave of absence. And while these workers are expected to get their back pay eventually, once the government reopens, in the meantime, the paychecks just stop. That creates some serious uncertainty for hundreds of thousands of families.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How did we even get here? How does the government of the United States just shut down? Let's unpack the political gridlock that led us to this point.
Okay, so as soon as the funding officially lapsed, the blame game went into overdrive. With the government closed, both parties are pointing fingers, each trying to control the story, especially with midterm elections on the horizon.
So from the Republican side, you have President Trump laying out their argument pretty directly. He's pinning the responsibility squarely on the Democrats, basically saying their priorities are with undocumented immigrants, not with funding the government for American citizens.
But then you flip over to the other side, and Democratic leaders have a totally different story. They're arguing that the Republican Speaker of the House basically engineered this crisis by sending Congress home, making a shutdown pretty much a sure thing.
So if you put these two arguments side by side, you can really see the competing narratives. Republicans are saying Democrats are holding up the whole process over immigration. Democrats are saying, no way, Republican leadership forced this to happen. It's two completely different interpretations of the exact same event.
But let's look beyond all the finger-pointing. What are the actual policy disagreements that are stopping a deal from happening? This is where the political fight gets really tangled up in legislative details.
Okay, here's where the rubber really meets the road. Democrats are insisting on making big policy changes right now, not later. Their main sticking point? They want to make the expiring tax credits from the Affordable Care Act permanent. Republicans, on the other hand, are pushing for a much more short-term fix. They want to pass something called a continuing resolution that would just fund the government until mid-November and, kick these bigger fights down the road.
And what is a continuing resolution, or a CR? Think of it like a stopgap measure. It's designed to keep the government's lights on at current funding levels for just a short period of time. It avoids a shutdown, but it doesn't actually solve any of the underlying budget disagreements.
Now, the impact of all this goes way beyond those 750,000 furloughed workers. This kind of gridlock in Washington creates some serious ripple effects for services that all of us rely on every single day.
The effects are really going to be felt all across the country. For instance, the Small Business Administration is set to shutter. That's a big hit to entrepreneurs. Your favorite national parks? They're going to close. Trying to get a permit for something? That's going to slow to a crawl. And yeah, while essential services are supposed to stay open, the wider disruptions are still going to be felt by a lot of people.
So how does this all end? How do we get the government reopened? Well, it really all comes down to simple math in the Senate. And right now, that math is looking like a pretty big hurdle.
Here's the fundamental reality of the situation. To get a funding plan passed and reopen the government, Republicans need help. They just don't have enough votes to get a bill through the Senate all by themselves.
To break this stalemate, Republicans need to convince at least 7 Democrats to vote for their plan. But as of right now, they've only managed to get 3 on board. So you can see they're still well short of the votes they actually need to end the shutdown.
And that really leaves us with the million-dollar question hanging over all of Washington. The government is closed, public services are on hold, and both political parties are completely dug in. So who's going to blink first?